Welcome to Entrepreneurial State of Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell, and I am excited to be here with Marta Sylvester from NuGen Packaging. How are you?
Great. Happy to be here.
Well,
Thank you
again,
so much.
happy to have you, and you have an interesting story, and I'm going to learn along with the audience. And so I always like to start with the origin stories. You know, one, I'm an Avengers fan. I like to always say the superhero origin stories, and I think of people like you as superheroes. So you were born where, and where'd you go to school, and how'd you get into the business?
Sure. So I was born in Brooklyn. To Puerto Rican parents that migrated in the 1950s in search of a better financial situation. I have two older siblings, 10 and 11 years older, so technically I had two sets of parents growing up, which was kind of cool.
And you were the baby. So
I was the baby.
Spoiled baby, huh?
Absolutely, 100%. And so I attended public school in Queens. We moved to Queens when I was about 6 years old. And so I attended a wonderful public school right across the street from Queens College. So we had a lot of student teachers that came on board. And that public school for me was the foundation that really led to a lifetime of intellectual curiosity, which served me super well later on in life.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And so from that grammar school, I then went on to Rachel Carson Junior High School, also in Flushing. I attended 2 years at Rachel Carson Junior High School. And really, it wasn't until later in life as well where you kind of really understand the influence that all of these different things that happen in your life have on you, the effect that they have on you. And so for me, Rachel Carson Junior High School really was impactful.
Wow.
And it was impactful because when I first attended Rachel Carson Junior High School, I didn't know who she was. I had no idea who she was, right? But there was this amazing woman whose name was on a school.
Right.
That
was so rare. That was so rare back then.
Super rare, right? It was the early 70s.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that we learned something about Rachel when I attended the school. But most of what I learned at the library. So I was one of those library kids, right? I wanted to know something. I went to the library, and so I read a number of Rachel's books to include The Silent Spring.
Oh, okay.
And so that book really inspired me to a life that kind of sort of led me to where I am today with a sustainable packaging business.
Right.
And so Rachel taught me a lot of things. She taught me about being a woman and learning not to be silenced, right? To stand on your convictions.
And have your own voice, And
have your own voice, absolutely.
Right.
And then as an environmentalist, she taught me that, you know, in nature, nothing exists alone, right? We all have a part in what happens with our environment.
Right.
And so this was, again, sort of, you know, walking through that journey. And I then went on to college. Right, well, not from middle school. That would have been quite the feat.
I say you're precocious.
Yeah. I was good, but I wasn't that good. So I went on to high school, to Midwood High School. We moved back to Brooklyn.
Okay.
And then from Midwood High School, I went to Pace University.
Oh, Pace, yeah, great school.
And married while I was at Pace University. I had my son and stayed at home for a few years. And then somewhere around 1992, we realized that in order to be financially stable, we really needed a second income, right? Like so many families even today. And so I decided I was going to venture out into the workforce. I hadn't completed my degree yet. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted some flexibility just so that I could still be an effective mom. So I thought that was going to be the key, right? And so I thought I'd move on to a position in sales. That was not successful for me. I learned very quickly that there were some stereotypes that I was expected to, you know, expected to stay in the line. So I was, I had to become an administrative assistant to a sales and marketing team for a blow molder in Brooklyn.
Uh-huh.
So there was plastic packaging blow molder in Canarsie on the border of East New York and Brooklyn.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I want a career in sales, but I need some method of getting there, right? And this is probably going to get me there. So I'll start there, I'll learn the business, and then I'll move on. Well, I got to Admiral Plastics, and I just became a sponge. I was just, like, I just couldn't get enough of, what we were doing, the plastics industry, the molding process.
Now, were you in sales at that time, or?
So no, I wasn't. I wasn't yet.
Right.
I started out in
As administrative
assistant.
EA, executive assistant.
So I did, some secretarial duties, but really the bulk of the work that I did was in furtherance of the sales cycle. So anything that helped the salespeople get in the door, when they got in the door, helping them prepare things that would take them to the next level.
But that's great training, to know the details and what all the back office stuff.
Absolutely. And I was part of the conversation, right? So I was in all the meetings when the conversations were happening about, all right, well, here we are, we're sitting with the customer. What does the customer want? What information do we need to get to the customer? How are we closing this sale?
Right.
And so that was all really interesting to me. And very specifically, the pharmaceutical packaging part of the industry was even more fascinating to me because it required a lot of detail about regulation, how do we get a customer, the sales cycle is very long in the pharmaceutical industry, so how do we get the customer to make a switch, all of those things. So it was fantastic training. I couldn't have asked for a better gig,
it was
right,
an
at that point.
MBA of the business, right?
Absolutely. And so within a year of being in that position, the salesperson for the Midwest found another job and there was an opening. And quite the bold move on my part, I went in and I asked for that job.
Really? Now your husband was supportive and the family, it's like everything you have to move. I mean.
No, I didn't have to move.
Oh, didn't? Oh, really? Oh,
so no, well, I didn't know it at the time, right? There was a possibility of that.
Right.
But I went in and I pitched that I could do this from here.
Oh, okay. Good for you.
I mean, I could get on a plane and I could, rent a car and I could do all of that. After all, she lived in Chicago, so most of her time was spent on a plane. So I could do that from New York.
Right. Interesting.
I don't need to be in Chicago. Right. So I went in, I pitched it, and I was told, well, that's. I won't use the vulgar language that was used at the time, but that's quite the bold move. I'll tell you what, we'll give you 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I thought, wow, 3 months. Okay, I could do something in 3 months. I kind of already am familiar with the customer base there because I've been talking to them, and I thought, well, I would just start organically.
But it shows their respect for you, too, the respect that they had with what you did to say, we're going to give you 3 months.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the key here, if I'm going to leave any advice out there for anyone, the key was I was never afraid to ask questions. I was never afraid to be in the mix, and I always volunteered for everything that would help me learn.
That is such great advice. And again, we were talking earlier, I have a 16-year-old daughter who is, class president, is doing all this stuff, but still doesn't necessarily have the confidence. I have to tell her to go speak to the waiter, to do this as successful. And so often to see that presence of mind, that's rare, but it pays dividends.
Absolutely pays dividends. And it's, I think for me, my entire life has been feeling the fear, and just moving toward it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst that could happen?
So no fear.
Right?
So that's
No, there was fear.
Right.
Let's not make any mistake. There was a ton of fear. There were a lot of times right before a sales call that I would just go to the bathroom and retch.
Right.
Because I was so terrified that I would do the wrong thing. The good thing about all of that was that I was paired with a mentor, a gentleman by the name of Gabe Hickey.
Okay.
Who is very respected in our industry. He was amazing.
Was he a boss?
He wasn't a boss. He was a salesperson as well.
Okay.
But he was experienced.
Okay.
And he, really held my hand through so many sales calls. He was a person that even to this day, if I picked up the phone and I called him and said, hey, I need some help or I need some advice,
That's wonderful.
he would be there for me. He was that kind of mentor. He was fabulous. And so I, at the very least, had somebody that I could sort of, count on to guide me. And so I did that. I went on to work for other manufacturers as well as distribution.
Right.
And so in manufacturing.
So the 3 month, when you did that, what happened after the 3 months? What?
Oh, well. So after the 3 months, and by the way, the coolest thing about that job was that I got a company car.
Oh, wow.
And that company car came equipped with a car phone.
Oh,
Which you remember those car phones, right?
That was one of these big car phones. And the people you see, they were so proud that they had this big phone. And, it's like, I'm cool.
That's right. Now it would be so embarrassing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So after the 3 months, I mean, it was clear that I was capable of handling the job.
Right.
I mean, personally, I kind of felt like, I was, am I really doing a good job? I wasn't sure that I was doing the right thing at the time. But I was growing the business organically.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, that was really the important thing.
Right.
And so I kept the job, and then the company was sold, and I stayed on with them for a little while, and then I moved on to another manufacturer.
Okay.
And then distribution.
Okay.
So distribution was an amazing education because I wasn't solely focused on the goods of the one manufacturing process, right? I was able to learn more processes, more industries, right? Because now you have a huge book of business that you can go after.
Right.
And so I stayed within distribution, and I sort of rose in the ranks from sales rep to account manager to VP of sales and marketing.
Let me stop, because one of the things, the reason I was asking about, because I often do a lot of lectures and talk about the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And it sounds like you have, because so many people, especially women, especially people of color, will have a mentor. Someone will give them guides, but that sponsor is the one who's behind the room who says, Marta needs to be promoted. She needs a raise. And so often we'll have all sorts of people advising us, but we don't have someone in the back room advocating for us. It sounds like you did that. So how were you able to get the sponsors to really help you rise? Because you won't rise without a sponsor in there saying good things about you.
Well, it was knowing that I had a voice and that I had to use that voice. Right. And that I had to promote myself.
Right.
Because I really didn't have anybody that was outwardly advocating for me.
But you added value to them so that when they were making that decision, you said, we need to promote her, or we may lose her, or this. And so you had those. You don't have to have a close relationship, but you had those folks who were really willing to be behind the scenes. So that's good. Now we're going to take a short commercial break, but we'll pick it up right there, because this is great advice. Because this is all about the entrepreneurial mindset. It's not just about having your own business. And some people have the entrepreneurial mindset. Some people have what I call the incremental mindset, where I'll do whatever you tell me to do, but I'm not going to do it unless you tell me. And obviously you don't have that. So we will be back in a minute after the short commercial break with Marta Sylvester.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it. Hip hip hop.
Casinos by the ocean.
Hip hip hop.
Now that's New Jersey.
Welcome back to Entrepreneurial State of Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell, with Marta Sylvester from NuGen. And so we've talked about your manufacturing. I want to jump right in. So what did you do just before you started this company? What forced you to launch the company?
So I was in distribution. The company that I worked for at the time was about to sell to one of the largest distributors in the world at the time. And I just did not want to go work for that company. I really had a different vision. I wanted to do something more sustainable. This was at about the time that really everybody was starting to really take note that packaging was contributing negatively to the environment. And so my history, right? I have that entire history, and I thought, well, there are things that we can do. Why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we raising the alarm and finding sustainable solutions that can get us there? Why isn't anybody doing that? And the more I spoke to other people in the industry, the more I realized that people had done things, but typically they didn't end well, and so end operative word, and the whatever projects they were working on ended horribly, hard fails, and they just kind of all right, well, we'll deal with it later, which was not okay with me because I knew that there were opportunities to do things. There were companies out there that were doing really fabulous things, and one of those things was post-consumer regrind. So taking product from the recycling stream and repelletizing it and making new products of it. So I was really interested in that.
Interesting.
And so I decided, well, I'm going to jump off of the entrepreneurial cliff. And one of two things is going to happen. Either there's going to be a splat at the other end, in which case, not something that I haven't ever had happen to me in the past, right? I'll dust off the CV and I'll find another job. Big deal, right? I'm confident in what I know in the industry. But on the flip side, if things went well, I would at least buy myself one more year. Right. And I could keep moving forward, and 9 years later, almost 10 years, we're still here. We're doing well.
So what was your first product? What was the first product? And one of the things that people often say is, I'm either going to succeed or I'm going to learn. So you don't lose. You're going to learn or succeed. And so all right. So you start the company. Was it same name company?
NuGen Packaging.
NuGen Packaging. And so what was the very first product that you had? And
so one of the first things that I did, because I knew that I had to have some sort of income, right? I was working out of my home, but I knew the market, I knew my customer base, and so I went to one of my, still to this day, they're a great customer, generic pharmaceutical customer. And I said, well, I'm gonna launch my own business. Will you come with me? And they said, yeah, of course.
Wow.
And they did.
Wow.
And then I had another customer in the contract packaging business And I asked him the same thing, and he said, yeah, absolutely, I'll support you. He was an entrepreneur, and the business that I was with before, we supported him when he started his business.
Now,
So
were they
he's-
coming? Were they joining your team, or were they giving the business? They were giving you their business. They were switching their business from someone else to you.
Exactly, they were switching their
And what kind of
business to me.
packaging were they making? What were they?
So plastic packaging,
Right. Okay.
CRC closures, child-resistant closures,
Okay.
white plastic bottles
Wow,
for
okay.
drugs,
Wow.
for
Wow.
pharmaceutical drugs.
Love it.
And so they said, okay, we'll switch, we'll come on board, we'll support your business.
But
we
what about
believe in you.
the plant, the machines and other things? How did you finance that?
So I didn't have to finance any of it because I wasn't manufacturing any of it.
Okay,
I went to the factory, so that was part two, right? So
interesting, okay.
Will your customers support you,
Right.
right? So yes, okay, we have that customer support. Now, will the factory support me?
Right,
Because
okay.
now I'm a standalone, right?
Right.
And so I went to the factory. I knew ownership at the factories, and I went to them and I said, hey, I'm starting this
Right.
company. Will you support me? Well, some of the factories supported me, and some of them were afraid to support me,
Interesting.
which I understood, right? I'm really, they know me
Right.
personally, but now I'm starting to do an entirely different thing.
Right.
You know, is she gonna stick the landing,
Right.
or
Right.
you know, or what are we talking about here?
But they had other people too they were working with too, right? So they would have to. So they may have had deep relationships with those folks as well. So they're not going to give up those relationships for a risk.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I was okay with that because I felt that, and I don't know why I felt this, right? Because sometimes you do things, as I said, you know,
That's
you
entrepreneurial
feel
state
the
of
fear,
mind,
but
yeah.
you do it anyway, right?
Yep.
I felt, well, you know what? If they don't want to sell me a bottle, I'll go to another company. There are
Right.
plenty of companies that sell components, and there might be another company that wants to align themselves with someone like me who
Exactly.
knows the marketplace,
Yeah.
right? And so that's what I did. Whoever decided not to support me,
Right.
I just moved on.
Right.
They're all supporting me now,
Right.
but at that time,
Right.
they weren't. So I just found somebody else that would.
Good for you.
And I changed things around. So, okay, not everyone in the generic pharmaceutical book of business that I had followed me. And so I found other things to sell.
okay.
I started going after the personal care market
Okay.
because that was an easier entry
Right.
into that market than
Right.
pharmaceutical.
Right.
Long sales cycle in pharmaceutical, super short one in personal care.
But that's the entrepreneurial state of mind. You're constantly looking for opportunity. You're
Right.
constantly searching and prodding and checking.
Absolutely. So I'm determined, I'm going to get from A to Z, maybe a windy road,
Right.
but I'm going to get there.
Well, it's always a widening road. See,
Right.
It's never a straight line. It's
Absolutely.
always a winding road, which makes it interesting. And so, so now where are you now? So, as far as this, I mean, how many employees do you have, and what's going on with the company?
So at the moment, we share warehouse employees. I have a warehouse
Okay.
and offices in Hillside, New Jersey.
nice.
Although
Okay.
since the
Yeah, the
pandemic,
pandemic is real. I was going to ask you.
has been really difficult. So we've been working at home. But what I did a couple of years ago, I had 5 employees,
Okay.
and I had partners, because this is a crazy windy road, as you say.
yeah.
And then, so the partners are gone, and there was a come to Jesus moment. You know, do I move ahead? And if I do, how am I going to do that? And am I going to be true to my convictions?
Right.
Why I founded the company was sustainable packaging. Somewhere along the road, I kind of lost that because when you bring in partners, there's a whole different mindset.
They don't have the same agenda.
No. So now I had to make a decision, and unfortunately, part of that decision was now I'm riding alone, and I need to find somebody that's going to have the same level of conviction that I do,
Right,
the
right.
same work ethic,
Right.
And so I found someone that was working for me, right? So
Right.
she came on, she stayed with me. So it was she and I.
Right.
Within that next year we doubled the business.
Oh, wow, wow.
Just the two of us.
And what year was this? This was
This was 2019.
2019, wow, okay.
2019,
Okay.
we doubled the business. And I was sharing warehouse staff, so that wasn't a big deal. We had the warehouse in the same building.
Right.
And so now we're in a position where we're growing. I'm in hiring mode.
Right, right.
We're really excited. We're doing business today with Unilever, with Colgate.
Oh, really?
On sustainable projects,
Wow.
which is the thing that's so fascinating and so fun.
And so timely now, is in the, especially with this administration. So unfortunately, we just have a little bit of time. But now, are you a MBE certified? Are you MBE certified in New Jersey?
Not yet.
Well, now, why?
I know,
Well, yeah,
I know.
That's something you have to do. And so we work with
Absolutely.
folks on that, and I can connect you with the person at the
Perfect.
governor's office that does that, because that's really important. And so, one of the things that I'm trying to do is push all public organizations to list on their website how much they spend with veteran certified, women certified, and minority certified businesses, because they often don't get some opportunities that they have. And so. Well, this has really been wonderful getting to know you. How do people find your organization? What's your website? What's the contact information? If you could share that with them.
So we're at nugenpackaging.com. There's contact information there. We're in the process of putting together a brand new website solely focused on the sustainable packaging components that we are currently supplying to the industry and innovation as it's occurring, so that we can totally understand what's coming, what's being innovated, and more importantly, what brands have today that they can utilize in furtherance of a greener environment. So give us a call if you have a brand new package that you're thinking about, or if you have an existing brand that you really want to take from a fossil fuel derived component to a renewable component, or if you're just looking to refresh your packaging. Give us a call. We're happy to help. We work with small companies and large companies. Our goal is to bring sustainable packaging to the industry so that we can have a brighter tomorrow for our children. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Marta, and I'm going to symbolize the end of the pandemic by shaking your hand right, on TV.
Fabulous.
So
Thank
excellent.
you.
Thank you very much. This has been wonderful.
Thank
I want to
you.
thank you for watching Entrepreneurial State of Mind. Marta Sylvester, CEO of NuGen Packaging. I think you will hear more and more about this successful entrepreneur. So take care, and we will see you next time at Entrepreneurial State of Mind.